Right now, so we should be live. I'm gonna go
Hey,
to the YouTube and make sure, because last time that I didn't get all the right sound, that was very annoying.
yeah.
I'm not sure how far back the YouTube live stream is by a couple of
It's
seconds.
usually, I don't know, it'll usually be like 20, 30
Oh
seconds.
wow.
If it's the same as Twitch.
Oh, okay. Do you like Twitch as a platform?
Um, yeah,
Okay.
I did. I did like it, honestly. It was fun to do, but it made me it just made me too I had to you have to stick to a schedule really strict. It's almost like you're like broadcast TV. You have to be there at the same time so that people can know where to find you. And I think that was really the factor that kind of made it not work for me.
I
But
gotcha. Yeah, you have
yeah,
to
it
really
was,
keep a schedule with that
yeah,
audience.
it was fun to do.
Okay.
Like there were some days where I would get a bunch of people in and everybody wanted to talk and it ended up being fun. But yeah, it was a good time. And Twitch worked fine. I
Yeah.
like the way it archived stuff, so
Okay.
I didn't have any problems with it.
Yeah, that's why I like YouTube so far. Like, I can download the videos afterwards. It
Yeah,
does everything for me. I just grab a key. It integrates to OBS really, really well. So,
yeah,
well, everything checks out. So let's get. So this is
very cool.
Kenneth. Everybody,
Hello.
I'm not sure who's out there, but so you do Hearts Full of Sand.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Let's talk about
Yep.
like when I had the art pieces at the art show. People stopped because they're like, I see cars, I see guns, I see bears, a western thing. Okay, what is
Yeah.
this? So that's the vibe people get. So what to you? What is it?
I mean, that's basically it. Like, I think when I started out, I for a while I'd wanted to do a western, and I think that really came from, uh, I grew up reading manga, and so my whole experience of comics was really just manga. And so the first projects that I worked on when I was just learning, were really kind of just what I'd read.
Okay, what were you reading?
Um, man, I mean, it was like at that time it was, I was in middle school when like Toonami
Okay,
really hit at first, so it was like a lot of like Bebop and Outlaw Star and Sailor Moon, and that was when I was, really getting into it. And so a lot of the early comics that I was trying to do were just like bits and pieces
okay,
of all that stuff, put together. So it was really Japanese kind of comic copycat almost. And so after a little bit of that, I kind of like it didn't feel very authentic, I think.
okay.
And so I wanted to do something that was like something I knew, something I'd had experience with, which was, I grew up here in Texas, so I thought I'd do a Western. And I had that idea in my head for like 10 years or something before I actually did it.
Okay.
And so what I wanted to do is I just wanted to do like all my favorite Western stories are very simple. It's uh, somebody trying to track down a bandit or
Yeah.
somebody,
So, well, the old spaghetti stuff.
it's really, yeah, really, really focused in on the character and not really a huge world building or, any of that stuff. It's just
Because you know
like,
what it is. It's you're in this genre. The genre
yeah,
is just a backdrop for this. It's the motif
yeah,
for your story,
and
and then you just tell your story.
exactly. And so often the stories kind of don't really matter as much because they often run the same themes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more just like fun to be along for the ride, even if
Yeah,
you know,
that's
the white hat's going to win, black hat's going to get shot in the shootout at the end. Like it all kind
it's a
of,
genre piece, and that's what it's
yeah,
for. And then
exactly.
you can pervert it, you can play with it, but you're in it to play in this world.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to just keep something really simple, and so I kind of had this story. I think I actually did about a chapter of it back in 2000, I don't know, 9,
Okay,
2008, something like that. And I'd done like a whole chapter of it, and it was really different. It was like this really manga-y, like,
okay,
just black and white. I even toyed with doing like a silent comic for a while. Um, but that didn't really work out. It didn't really feel right, and so many years later I started it again.
Okay.
Just totally new. Basically, the title is the only thing that
Oh,
stayed.
okay. Interesting.
But so I just had to. It's a pretty simple story. I just wanted to have a reason for people to shoot at each other, basically, and it ended up being this whole big drama. I wanted to, when I started out, I was like, I'm gonna do like an action western
Oh,
comic.
wow.
But then when I started getting into like into
The
the
guts of
the
it.
writing of it, it was like, okay, well, I need them to have a reason to shoot at each other, so we have to do this, but that doesn't make sense, so I need to set it
Oh,
up a little
wow.
better. And by the end, now I've been doing it for 4 years, and I'm just now getting to my first action scene.
That's
We're like
funny.
160 pages in. It's just now starting the action. So up until now, it's just been this really kind of slow, drama,
Yeah.
basically like a Western drama.
Now you
Um,
get to the fun part.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I got all the setup you could ever want, and now I've finally got people shooting. So
And you have like a long vision in mind for this, because people. So how long is you're aiming for the book? Let's tell everybody this.
um, it was supposed to be about 250, 300 pages. So I wanted a big, thick graphic novel, which is a terrible idea if you're doing your first book. Everybody does that. Everybody always starts with this big, great idea, but yeah, then you're 4 years in and you're halfway done, and
That's fine.
now I'm ready for it to be done. I want to do other things, but
But now it's all set, so you
yeah,
just power right through it.
yeah, exactly. Well, the second half's a lot easier. It's all just people running and
Yeah.
shooting, so that's
The
easier to draw.
resolution.
But
So all the dominoes are set up. Now let's just knock them over.
finally, yeah. But it was planned to be about 250, 300, but it's probably going to end up about 350,
Woo!
somewhere in
Wow.
that range. So
That's just story, right? Not like table of contents, background stuff. Like the
yeah,
book itself is gonna
that's
be
just
fat. That's
actual
just story
actual
pages.
pages.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah. And I'm tossing around the idea. I have so much material, character sheets, and I've got whole sheets for just different props and stuff. I like to draw stuff out before I actually put it in the comic, so that way I know every panel is going to be the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, yeah.
Especially when characters disappear for 80
That is
pages and then come
true.
back, like I need to make sure all their stuff is the
Well
same. And
represented. Yeah. I think once you get
um,
to like 80% done is when you start worrying about that last bit, because then you have it.
oh
That's
yeah,
to me when I'm putting a book together.
yeah,
The worst
yeah.
part is like I need to
I'm
find
sitting on
stuff to
stacks like
use.
this of just
Yeah,
material.
that's the best part, having the material done. So that's
Yeah,
crazy.
so I can make it a pretty, depending on how I actually print it, I can make it a pretty big
Yeah.
book. So
And you've always thought of it as a big fat one shot. Is never was going to be divvy up into issues.
yeah, well, a lot of the reason for that is because like I said, I've always read manga, so I'm used to like trade paperbacks. I'm used to omnibus, and I like to read comics in big chunks like that.
Yeah.
I've never really been into the issues thing because to me it feels like it's over too quickly.
Yeah.
I'd rather wait for like a trade paperback or like an anthology or something and read through it like a film. And so I kind of, because really that's the way I like to read comics, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I did it.
Okay.
Um,
I,
and so I've always kind of had it in mind that it would be one big story. I didn't want to even break it up into chapters. There's no chapter breaks.
okay. So you just tell your
Um, you know,
your scenes are as long as short as they need to be at the end of the day.
yeah,
So it doesn't really matter.
yeah,
So that's to me that's really open. That's why I love the idea of like television over movies now for certain stories, because you can
yeah,
tell a different story, especially now with like Netflix, where there's no real
yeah.
recap anymore, because you don't need to. You're watching the episode
Yeah, it's
right
almost
away.
like a 25-hour movie,
Yeah, and even then it's like each episode can be 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, just depending on what you need it to be, and just tell the
Yeah,
story that way.
yeah, exactly.
I
So,
remember when I was
yeah,
younger, a lot of my comics were single issue stories. So you're
yeah,
younger than me, so I guess because I dipped out, I probably dipped out by the time you dipped in a little bit, and it was like
yeah.
long epic stories after long epic stories, like multiple
Oh,
book
yeah.
crossovers. I was like, I can't take this anymore. I just want
Yeah.
to read my
Yeah,
book.
especially in especially in Western comics, that's such a, like ongoing stories
Yeah,
and single issues, and you can jump into a story for a single run, maybe, you know, 4, 10,
yeah.
15 issues, and then leave and then come back later when it gets interesting again. And I never really interacted with comics in that way. So for me, it was always like, you know, um,
Like I see it on your shelves. Like there, you can tell
yeah,
there's like chunks, and they're
yeah, it's all I've got a I you know I've worked on it a little bit. I've kind of wanted to jump into more Western comics more recently, so I've got a big box of issues over
okay.
there of different things. But yeah, I've always just, I've never really enjoyed reading it in such small bits like that. So that's really the only reason why I did the book the way it is that I almost wanted it to be like a film.
Okay.
Read it all at once,
Yeah.
get the whole thing.
Get the big.
Yeah. Plus, I love. There's nothing better than having one big, nice, like a nice hardcover,
Yeah,
really premium book.
that's true.
I've always really liked that.
And so this has been your main project for ever.
Yeah, yeah. I've been working on this for about, well, it's a little over 4 years now.
Okay.
So
So you like you said earlier, this is kind of a reflection on where you grew up in Texas. So have you always been interested in westerns, like TV, movies?
no,
It's stuff
no,
around you.
no. In fact, I think the opposite
Okay.
actually. When I was a kid, like I said, around middle school, like Toonami
Oh, okay.
hit. And it was like, I remember sitting down the first day and there was this new program on. It was like, okay, we're gonna watch, the first show is Sailor Moon, and I remember just like, what is this thing?
Yeah, compared to everything else that's
It
going
was
on.
so like, and show after show after show, every single one I was like obsessed with. Sailor Moon and Outlaw Star and Tenchi
Yeah,
Muyo and
like
Bebop, and everything is just like Trigun, like all of that
yeah,
stuff,
for
like that
real.
first era. When FLCL came, like all that stuff. It was like the first wave of Toonami stuff was like, that's what I really got into. And man, after that, it was all about anime, all about manga, everything I wanted to do. I want I was, man, I was in middle school when I was like, I'm gonna be a manga artist. That's what I want to do, and I've just never stopped.
That's the life of a creator. You get that bug early, and then you
Yeah.
just kind of push forward. And now you mentioned all those series that you mentioned. They're all kind of westerny, like Bebop, especially Bebop, and Outlaw
Yeah,
Star,
yeah,
and
a
Trigun,
lot of
especially.
those. Yeah, for sure. A lot of those. I think that they may have picked a lot of those titles to go
Yeah,
because they were, they'd play a little bit better, I guess, in
yeah. I can almost argue
America,
even
but like,
like Sailor Moon because it's very good guy, bad guy. It's just in a giant.
yeah,
You're facing off at Tokyo Towers instead of the saloon. You know, big
yeah,
standoffs.
yeah. But I think in kind of in that world, it was really Trigun that was
Yeah,
like, I love
I can
Trigun,
tell.
and the comics especially.
Oh,
I was so into them for so many years, and a lot of when I was learning to draw, that was a really big one. That was like, okay, how do I draw faces? Let me look at Trigun, or how do I ink, or how do I do texture work, or what materials should I use? It was always like, oh, let's go
yeah.
check Trigun was the first thing. Like, let's see.
Yeah, I
So
can really
Trigun's a
see
really
it.
big.
I can really see it in your style, and and the manga is similar to the TV show, the style, but it's like chunkier. I feel right.
Yeah, the manga is like really sharp. Like the way he
Yeah,
does faces, it's like super angular and like tall foreheads, and it's very unique. I
super
think.
stylized.
Yeah, it's super. It is its own
Hmm.
style in a really big way. I think, especially for a lot of manga, which tends to have really similar,
Yeah,
you know
looks across the
s-
board.
similar style. But yeah, Trigun to me was like, everything was like gritty and dirty and rusty and dusty, and like there was this texture to it that I really loved. And then yeah, I watched the anime at first, and it was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. And then I started reading the manga, and the manga is totally different.
Oh yeah, the mood's
It was
different.
just like this crazy world. And I got so into it, and it was like everything. If I wanted to learn how to draw something, I was like, well, let's see if there's one in Trigun, maybe I can check that. And so a lot of the way that I ink, especially with texture stuff,
Yeah.
the way I make things look chipped and dirty and grimy, it's just totally lifted straight from the Trigun
Well,
manga.
that's the other thing too about your book. Like, it's none of it is digital.
Yeah,
You're
Yeah, I've always been really big into traditional, and I think in particular inking.
yeah.
Um,
Like I
which a lot of people don't like inking. That's the scary part. It's really permanent, but to me, that's the part where
you can do a
you
lot
know
with
it.
it.
Yeah, I mean, the drawing becomes more interesting there, I think.
I get.
And it's like the ink does a lot of stuff for you, maybe that you're not planning, which maybe is why people don't like it. But I always kind of liked, let if you use stuff like brushes and nibs, it'll kind of add its own texture in a way you weren't expecting.
I sometimes when I ink, I
So,
always tell people I just let the brush do its thing, and each
yeah,
brush has its
absolutely.
own personality. So it's like if I want
Yeah,
this personality, I gotta use this brush in this way. If I want to get this personality or this texture, I gotta use this thing in this way. And sometimes you
yeah,
just kind of let it's to me it's like controlled chaos. Like I just
yeah,
let it go, and then I I mess it up, and I gotta fix it. There's a lot of like
yeah.
fixing
Well,
it.
that's why you have white ink, white out.
And even then, with the
Yeah,
white, you can like if you plan it, you can use the white ink as a part of what you're trying to do. Like you, because I've
yeah,
seen you use thumbprints, right? Like you ink up
yeah,
your thumbs and get these
yeah. I started doing
textures.
that real recently. Thumbprints, because it comes out looking like hatching
Mm-hmm.
almost, but it adds like its own kind of, because your thumbprints are very evenly spaced,
Yeah,
so it's almost like really precise hatching, but you just get it done real
it's
quick.
more
So
organic. I can see that.
yeah,
Like in my toolkit, I have an old toothbrush that's all been
yeah,
sprayed out, and so there's like years
yeah.
of
I've
color
tried
on
a
it.
I, I've got a whole thing here of different brushes that I've tried.
Oh, right on.
Big ones and different kinds of things and nibs. And I've got one thing I like to do is I have like a little card, and you can use a nib, like a pen nib.
Okay.
If you want like really good splatter, you can use a card and a pen nib
Oh,
and dip it in ink and then flick it off the card, and it'll give you like that good like blood splatter, like
yeah.
chunky.
Interesting.
Whereas a toothbrush is like a
Splatter, like
toothbrush
a
will give you real
fine
fine.
mist. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you use the little card, it'll
Oh,
do like
okay.
chunky blood drops. So
I used to just feed the ink in the brush and just flick it with my finger and just
yeah,
hit it, and
yeah,
then it
exactly.
gets everywhere.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to
Yeah.
do it, but like whiteout and stuff, you'll use it, and I had I just finished the inking the first page of the new
Oh
book,
yeah, yeah.
and I was drawing the headlight of the motorcycle, and I messed it up because usually I'm just like I'll wing it when I get to like because I do like this little kind of
Oh
hatching
yeah, yeah.
to make it look like there's like that texture
Mm-hmm.
on the bulb. I did this hatching and I messed it up, and I was like, this looks pretty bad, but let me just put a little whiteout on it and see if that
Oh yeah.
hides it. I did like a little wiggly stripe of whiteout
Oh,
on it, and it totally looked like shine, and it
huh.
just was like, oh, there it is. Okay, it's done.
No messes
Like I,
anymore.
I thought I messed it up, but apparently it's fine.
That's good.
So, we think you never know what you're gonna get. Like, you work it until it, you
Yeah.
know,
And your main tool is
it's good.
the G pen, right?
Yeah, I mostly use the G pen. I use a lot of I think it's called a mapping pen, which is like it's like a little
Okay.
crow quill,
Okay.
which is the finer one. So I use that I try to use both to give like a depth
Mm-hmm.
thing. So for kind of main focus characters and like close up objects, I use a G pen.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I use this for backgrounds and stuff. It ends up being really fine and gives you like a depth.
So where did
Uh,
you? So just from the manga, that's why you pick the pens and the nibs, because the history
Yeah,
of it. Okay.
pretty much. Yeah, I everything that the comics that I was reading, that's what I wanted to do. It still
Mm-hmm.
is.
So you just what tools they use, and you just went that route.
Yeah, what tools did they use? Because how they get their lines, that's how I want my lines to look. Basically, that's just how it started, and along the way, I've kind of learned a lot about the pens, and now the things that I know about them now that I didn't know when I started are a lot of what I like about
Yeah.
them.
Okay. Because I've tried it a couple of times. I just couldn't get them to work for me. But
Yeah,
I never burnt them, like you've talked about.
yeah, that's like my crusade is everybody that I ask if you've ever used a G pen, every person I've ever asked, they always say, "Yeah, I used it, but it was really hard and it dribbled a lot and I didn't really like it." 100% of the people that I've asked, the next thing I ask is, "Did you burn the nib with a lighter?"
Nope. I did not. Mm-mm.
Nobody's ever done it. It's for some reason no matter where you look, if you look in like old how to draw books and
Yeah,
like
I've never come across. I've seen tutorials on this
online or
all the time.
anything,
I've
there's no
never come
info on
across
it.
this tip ever. Besides
I
you.
know, yeah, it's just because the nibs they come with a waterproof. They ship with waterproof oil on them,
Oh yeah, that makes
and it
sense.
repels water so they don't rust, but
Yeah.
it also repels ink. So you plug the nib in for the first time, you light it up, burn it, burn the oil off, and then it doesn't
Like
drip.
you see the oil come off, or is it like
No, you don't. You just burn it for a couple seconds.
okay, and you know it's
You know,
off?
burn it for a couple seconds, put it in water, clean it off,
Okay,
and then
I
yeah.
have to give that a try
You
now.
can't really that's part of why it's so tricky is that you can't really see that there's oil on it,
Yeah,
but it drips and everybody gets frustrated and then they quit.
yeah.
So it's hard to find people that still use it.
Because every time I did it, I could not get a smooth line. Like it just a little bit, and then the whole thing will come out. I was like, why won't
Yeah.
I
Well,
can't feed
the other
this?
thing too is that almost always people come from, they're using microns
Yeah.
or different multi-liners, and these things are pretty good, but they do a single line to
Mm-hmm.
an extent. You can kind of get a couple of different lines out of them, but they'll do a solid line.
Yeah.
And people, when you draw with this, people learn to draw on these, and they do a really smooth,
Mm-hmm.
slow line, and they keep it really, really, really nice and slow. And you can't work that way with a G pen. If you do that, because it's so flexible,
Yeah, it'll
and
change.
because it's picking up your paper
Yeah,
texture and your
everything.
heartbeat and your elbow and your shoulder and everything. You're gonna get these real wiggly,
Mm-hmm.
nervous looking lines.
I can always get the
And
taper, but it always either went too fast or too slow.
yeah, it's always, yeah. And so the other big tip with using G pens is that you can only slash with these. If you go slow and consistent like
Mm-hmm.
that, it's going to be wiggly and wobbly, and it's going to get all out of control. With these, you just slash.
Oh, okay.
Like
So it's got to be one quick.
you got to go quick, even if you aren't sure. What I like to do is I go, okay, I'm starting here and I'm ending here, and just and that's why the thing that I
Mm,
can never get
okay.
I can never get is word bubbles. If you look at in the earliest pages of Hearts Full of Sand, the word bubbles are all circles
Oh,
or
okay.
ovals,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they're curved, and they all look really scared and nervous, because I was trying to do like that with them. For some reason, the word bubbles, I can never get it out of my head. I always get too into my own head, and I
Oh, okay.
get really nervous. But about halfway through, I was like, I'm just gonna stop doing that. And I started doing like these kind of like angled shapes
I love
instead.
them, to be quite honest. Like
Yeah,
it
because
fits.
just yeah, just get rid of the problem,
Yeah.
basically.
Like that's my problem when I was lettering is that I did it in Illustrator and everything was always felt always a little too slick, you know.
Yeah,
So I started like adding little
yeah,
wiggles to them, like just mucking with the shapes a little bit. I didn't get further than that when
yeah,
I stopped lettering books for quite a while.
yeah,
But yeah, your balloons like fits it lives in the book, and like, I think it's perfect.
yeah. And I mean, I try to do, it's the same thing. Like I try to do everything traditional, and along with that too, I also do all the word bubbles and all the sound effects on the page. I draw them on the page, which to a lot of people would be really annoying because it does throw up a lot of problems. Like, if I want to change the script after the fact,
Yeah.
that's a whole undertaking. If I want to, if for whatever reason I ever translate a book that I do
Oh.
into another language, it might have to change that. So there are definitely downsides to doing it that way, but to me, it fits in the artwork so much better. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's not like in Western comics, it's the name of the game is don't hide the art. And
Yeah.
so you tend to get tiny little bubbles, or you'll get tons of bubbles that kind of are like snaking around the art,
Yeah.
and if you look for it, you'll see, in Western comics, they add the bubbles later,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always like, okay, where can I fit this thing in so that it's not going to
Interfere.
hide
Yeah.
anything in the artwork? Because the artwork is king. And in manga, it's just, it's not like that. It's
It's
like,
part of the art.
yeah, it's all part of it, and I don't know if that came from, like scheduling things, because I know a lot of the reason why manga is the way it is because it's 12 pages or 18 pages a week, bang them out, get them out, put them to print. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you can cut out having to add bubbles later, stuff like that. So I'm not sure if that's exactly why, but it's very much like a part of the artwork instead of like
Yeah, separated.
trying not to hide it,
Yeah.
trying to hide in the gaps. It's, the bubbles are part of the artwork,
Yeah.
and they're part of the emotion, and very much with the sound effects too. That's a big one. The
Mm-hmm.
sound effects, to be really impactful, are like to have them be part of the artwork, or to like, I can do stuff like I'll have a sound effect be behind a character. Like I had one trick that I do is like, I have, whenever I have somebody shutting in my Western book, I have a character who drives a truck around,
Okay.
and every time he shuts the door, I have this big like ka-chunk sound effect, but it's behind him,
Oh yeah.
but it's in front of the truck.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's almost like in the world.
That's what I like about it.
But
I've come across a couple of people who say the lettering needs to be invisible, and that it shouldn't live
yeah,
in the space. It should be like
yeah,
separate from the space. But I like it when it lives in the space.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, me too. And like, that's a really Western mindset, and I get the reason for that is to like, it's to kind of immerse you in it a little bit, so
Yeah.
to keep it really standardized. But I think and there's a lot of merit to doing that. But for me, it's always been more important to uh to make it part of the artwork, and to let it emphasize the
Yeah.
artwork a little bit. Plus, I've always just loved the look of, manga has this quality of like characters and text.
Yeah.
The relationship of the artwork and the text is
Mm-hmm.
like this really, really close relationship, and I love that. The look of text in artwork is always something that I really like, just visually. So
I think it's a little, like as we said earlier, it's just more immersive. Like it immerses the story and the words into the artwork world. So I
sure,
think it all kind
yeah,
of like works out that way. Oh, what was I gonna ask you
yeah.
about your book? Anyways, so let's see. And you're about halfway through your book right now.
Yeah,
Okay, and
yeah, about a little more than halfway, and I'm hoping, production wise, a little more than halfway. I'm hoping this, action scenes, for whatever reason, they tend to get drawn a little bit quicker than just people standing around. You kind of have to like drag yourself through scenes of people standing around talking, which is a lot of what
yeah,
I've done so far. Is grumpy cowboys talking grumpily to each
because you have
other.
to keep all
So
that detail because they're not moving. But once you start moving, like details are gone.
yeah, once they're moving, yeah, exactly. One of the easiest panels that I did in the new issue, is, when I have the character walking or standing, it's always like, okay, I got to make sure the proportions are right, and the way the cloth falls has to be right,
Mm-hmm.
and everything. But when I had this panel of the main character throwing the gate,
Oh yeah, yeah,
I banged that out super quick. It's a big, huge splash panel, big artwork, and I just like banged it out really quick because, if it looks off, if somebody's doing some crazy
yeah,
pose, it's hard to tell.
yeah.
So I was like, I'll just,
Doesn't matter at all.
bang my way through it.
Do you have some of your original pages like close at hand by any chance?
Yeah.
Show them
Yeah.
to the camera.
Which one do you want me to show?
Hearts of Sand,
like-
dude. Heart full
Okay.
of sand.
I got a lot of them actually.
That's the best
but,
part. Dude, at the
Um,
art show, people wanted to buy your pieces, but you were paranoid about losing
Yeah.
something at the because it's taking so long to get the book
Yeah,
together.
I try to keep everything kind of
Makes
together
total
until the
sense.
project itself is done. But yeah, I've got
Ooh.
I've got now 161. This is the last page I've done
Oh, that's nice.
so far. It's like the first shot.
Oh, that's cool.
So this is the last page I did. So everything's kicking off now.
How long did it take you to do all those speed lines?
Oh man, you know what? This is a funny story because these speed lines, I totally messed them up, big time.
How?
This is one of my first big panels of speed lines,
Yeah,
and
you did the
as you
whole
may
thing.
have noticed, there's about 300% the amount of speed lines that there needs to be on this panel. Because I thought, oh, I'm gonna do some lines that go in real close to the character, and then I'll have some that stay further away, and then I'll have
Okay.
some that are like just on the edges, on the far edges.
Okay.
And then by the time I was done putting all those in, I was like, oh no, I put in 3 sets of lines. Like there's way too many lines. So I'm here inking, like
Oh,
trying to white out some of the lines, like in between like the texture of the wood and everything, like oh trying to, and even when I brought it on the computer too and I scanned it in and toned it, I erased a couple more, like
that's
so it took,
hilarious.
yeah, it was an adventure. I was this close to throwing the whole
Oh
page
wow,
out.
was that the last part that you were doing?
Um, yeah, I was pretty close to the end. Like I got it, I think a little bit better on this second to last panel. You can see it's a little bit
Okay, yeah, a little more
more consistent
yeah.
and not so like. But yeah, as I go, I learn.
That's how we all are, right? Like
Yeah,
there's no like classes on this kind of stuff.
yeah, exactly. You try stuff and you mess it up the first time. Because I've been doing this book for so many years, you can see a lot of that. Like, the way I draw characters and things will change about characters. Like I've got a character whose hair grows
Oh
throughout
wow.
the comic,
Jeez.
and it's like it takes place over like over I think 2 days, and his hair grows about 3 times. It starts out being like, he's got a little mohawk, and then by the end he's got this
Oh, that's
long,
funny.
you know so little things like that, you can see as I get better, which I think is cool. I think is pretty cool about the book. As you read through it,
The artwork,
you see me you make a lot of errors and fix them.
the artwork like matures, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's another good reason to start with a short project instead of a long one.
It's a bit big opus, and I think it's for you especially. It helps you build like a long term like brand and a thing to do. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
the new the project we're working on?
yeah. So here's the first page for the new
Oh
project,
my god.
King Hit,
Yeah.
which is there's the motorcycle lens I was telling you about.
Oh wow.
I
Yeah.
just threw a little bit of whiteout on it, and it
And there it is. Yeah, I fixed it.
kind of fixed itself.
That's
I've been
funny.
drawing I've been drawing trees for
Oh
hours.
Jesus.
But yeah, it's a good first page. I like it.
That's good.
Came out pretty good. And I'm trying to do this, more manga-y
Yeah. Well.
kind of panel layout. Whereas my book, I try to keep it very
Okay. Yeah, I see it.
very simple,
Yeah.
right? And I try to keep the panels very, mostly squares, mostly very readable, very clean
Mm-hmm.
sort of presentation. But this one, I'm trying to do. Maybe it's not that much of a difference, but I try to do, these like sort of long
Overlay. Like you have
vertical
a panel
panels
overlay.
layering over each
Yeah.
other. Yeah, not everything lines up, so I'm trying to get more of a kind of loose manga flavor to it. But
It's good practice. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's good to try different things. So the thing I like about this comic is just like it's a lot more loose, and it's kind of
The
like
story is loose. So I just knew that I thought for you having a small issue, like a new issue, a full issue that you can sell to a group of people,
Yeah.
would be key.
Yeah.
And
yeah, absolutely.
and to me, we're gonna use Ruby's anime Yankee character that you designed for her as a comic, and I threw a couple of ideas at you. They're very loosey goosey, and we came up with this idea of, to me, it's essentially Double Dragon. You missed the first part
Right.
where the bad guys, hit the and kidnap the person and then run away, and then now
Yeah.
you're just seeing them run after the bad guys to rescue the damsel in distress. So
Yeah.
and so because every time I had a very loose outline, I told you like here are the beats, and you come up with ideas. And I'm like, cool, go with it. Because part of me, I remember being under art directors who are like my way or the highway. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, but you're not really in the trenches right here, and I think this direction, which is either
Yeah.
make my life easier and make the story move a little quicker, or it just makes my life easier, and you can't tell the difference. Like, there's no real.
Right.
Because when you told me what's on the gate sign for the buzzer, I was like, something. It lives in this,
Yeah.
it lives in this panel, and then it's gonna go away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like the world's very kind of
But-
like loosey goosey, and it's kind of all based on the Yankee character, because Ruby loves Yankees from in Japan, who are like these biker guys.
Yeah. Yeah, biker gang.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's that's what I like about this project, I think, is like, for my project, it's like my little baby, I'm trying to get it perfect and everything needs to be right, and I've got all these rules in my head for, how I can do things and how things need to be consistent, and I have all this, and you get roped into all this, extra work,
Yeah.
and then, so it's fun to almost like take a break and do something that's a lot looser, um, and it's like and it gets right to the action too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a couple pages in, I'm already doing action scenes, and that's what's really great about it too, is that I'm kicking off an action scene in my own book,
Yeah.
and
It's
so
good.
using this as an opportunity to let me try out some new techniques, and we'll see how they fly here, and then I can take them back over there and do them the right way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because I
almost like a little test bed for different techniques and
when I
stuff.
was in college, when we were doing my short story class, we talked about starting a story in media res, like in the middle. And so,
Yeah.
because if you do it from there and you kind of are careful with what your next initial pages of writing or a couple pages of a comic, you can tell the audience everything they need for the scene, and then we can just keep moving forward. And then the story
Right.
unfolds as you move forward, and then you can always tell the backstory behind it. And so you don't need to see that first part. You can start where the action is, get people hooked right away, especially for a new series. You want to hook them in right away, and then reel
Yeah.
them in afterwards.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways this new book King Hit is very much the opposite in that way of my book, which is, my book is 160 pages of setup, and this one is, there is no setup.
Yeah,
It's already going, and that's pretty refreshing too, as for me as the artist working on it. It's like, oh, like I can just kind of cut loose and just have the dessert first.
yeah. Just go right
So
into it. It sounds fun. But yeah, the idea was to get the book out quickly and have you do originals, which, like I said, everybody. But you don't want to sell your Hearts Full of Sand
yeah,
originals yet because you're still in production.
yeah. I've run into problems already. I think it was like 100 and something, 120 pages in or something like that. I ended up realizing that I'd cropped the final pages too small for
Oh,
print.
oh,
Like I cut too much of the bleed out on 120 pages. So I had a week where I had
oh
to
wow.
rescan probably about 40 or so of
Okay.
the originals again in order to add, a centimeter to each
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
And then I had to, batch them all together in Photoshop and re-crop them all, and it was a whole thing. So it's little things like that you never see coming, And um, I've got when I save pages, I save them in like 10 different forms. So I have like the scan,
Oh
the
okay.
clean scan. I'm paranoid about saving everything in 100
Mm-hmm.
different ways, and still it got past me anyway. I was missing parts of some of the bleed offs, and
Yeah.
so you never know what you're going to run into. So I try to keep everything together until the project's done, and
And then move
then
on.
we can do whatever we want. I'll have a stack of pages, probably like
That's
that.
gonna be amazing. Like just the pile of originals that you're gonna have
Yeah,
for this day.
yeah. I mean, it is pretty nice. Once in a while, I'll open up. I've got this down in this bottom drawer. I've got a big, or no, maybe they're down here. Yeah, I've got a big old pile of original pages. These guys. Oh,
Woo!
uh, this is 1 through 115.
Jeez.
These are older pages from 3-4 years ago, and so this is probably about a third of it right here.
Wow.
And then I've got another stack this big. I switched to cardstock halfway through, so that's the next pile's a bit bigger. But yeah, it's a lot of pages.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's impressive. It's gonna be a giant opus.
oh yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I wanted. I just wanted I want to finish a book, a big fat
Yeah.
thick book, and just have like one nice object and be like, that's what I did for 8 years.
It's a full project. Yeah. It's your whole life right now. It's awesome.
Yeah. So,
That's
what about? So, okay, you want to talk about the new book, King Hit, and so you're doing you kind of came up with the idea.
yeah. So I knew for you to capture your attention to really have you dive into it, you have to like it. We talked
Yeah.
about this. You're just being super honest because you're like, if I'm not really involved, if I don't love it, I won't really dive into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it makes sense because like as a designer, I had to learn the opposite. I have to like if the
Right.
work's in front, I have to whatever it is, I have to dive into it to get it done, and then move
Yeah.
it through.
Yeah.
But like I feel you have a little bit more of like artistic freedom to do that, and so
Sure.
we went through. We had talked. You, me, and Ruby had talked about. We had built this character, and then I just wanted action. Like, 'cause I wanted to be like the second. I think the second or third volume of Battle Angel Alita, where she's doing the rollerball stuff.
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
or whatever. I forget what it was called. But I remember in college reading that book, and I had finished it between classes. I was like, well, this is super quick, but I can feel the adrenaline. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Because I went back, like, there's no dialogue. It is just action all the way through. Like, the first book is, like, kind of paced pretty well, and it's kind of fatter. This one was a little thinner. I guess it's kind of a short period in her life, if I remember correctly. And it was just super fast paced. And so there was a mix of that, and a mix of it being like Double Dragon, Final Fight, just a brawler. Which is why on the second on the spread it's the world as a stage. Like you see where you see where he started. Do you have that by any chance?
Yeah, I've got it. I'm halfway through inking it now, actually.
Okay, yeah.
I've got.
So this is like the Mario stage of.
Yeah, it's like a little Mario world map, basically.
So Itchy.
And this one was tough because I had to basically plan out the whole rest of the.
We have to plot out the whole. All the characters.
the bit that we kind of thought out, because I'm thinking, okay, so here's issue 1, here's issue 2, it's like World 1, World 2, almost kind of like that. So it's like, okay, I'm making some kind of design decisions already about, what the buildings look like and, who we're going to encounter and how the story's going to unfold and stuff like that. But so I had to make a ton of those decisions up front. I know I'm texting you every day, like, oh, can we have this guy show up? And
it's cool because I thought with the map you have path that the character doesn't take, because that's how it is in like an RPG. There's sometimes you go through a certain path and you miss these other little side quest thingies. And so that was the general idea. Like, it's just boss fights. You've gone through the tournament and now it's Balrog, Vega, Sagat, and then Bison. Like, that was that was the whole crux of my idea. Just boss fights. Yeah, because I kept sending you stuff from Fatal Fury. I was like, Terry Bogard. I want him to fight like Terry, because it's kind of he kind of has this kind of loosey goosey street fighting style. It's not like pure karate. It's not pure Muay Thai. It's not any pure thing. It's just him learning how to fight from the streets, essentially. And so that's what I thought Ichi was. Ichi, like, he probably picked up some things here and there, but he was never like in a dojo for very long, because I don't think he's that disciplined. He's a little too wild.
Right. And I think kind of the tone of it was, I got right away the, like the brawler stuff and the visuals of it and the fighting and all that stuff was like, yeah, I get it. But I think the thing for me that was hardest to really nail down was the tone of the whole story. And I remember I sent you a rough draft at first. I was like, well, let me take a stab at this thing, because you have A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
Let me take a stab at writing it out and kind of fleshing all the in-betweens. And I remember I was very, it was very drama.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people were serious, and it was like and the first vision in my head of the character was very much like the artworks, where it's like very kind of ominous and serious, like real serious. And and you came back and you were like, this looks great, but let's add some funny. And I was like, oh, okay.
I remember reading through and watching through GTA, Great Teacher Onizuka, where it was kind of dramatic, and it's supposed to be all the shonen tropes, all the Yankee tropes, like the super serious face, where they go chibi, or like
but you can push it a little bit, just a little too far into comedy again. I think that's where that kind of thing really shines, is that is when it's so serious and the characters are so serious,
Mm-hmm.
but about something that's like maybe not that
Yeah,
serious.
like they crank it to
You know, and
12 on a something that's like a 2.
yeah, yeah, to where it's, and you're just like, oh, let's put some funny in it. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, and you could just put some jokes in the
Mm-hmm.
cracks and it all played.
Like
So
Jackie Chan movies, Stephen Chow, like Shaolin Soccer, Kung Fu Hustle. That
yeah,
kind of vibe. Like I said, GTO's that kind of vibe as well, where
yeah,
it's like kind of a serious drama, but he's kind of a really goofy, immature person.
yeah, yeah. I think that's where the whole thing really clicked. I was like, okay, yeah, I totally get this vibe now, and it, it lets me do stuff that I've drawn some goofy faces on these pages already that I would never ever do that
Oh
in my
yeah,
book,
your book has a different tone.
because my book is super serious, and so it's nice to be able to like, okay, well let me draw this goofy face, and I'll have people, just being really like, shown in manga intense about everyday
Mm-hmm.
things. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, the
So
whole arc is that way. Like the whole book is gonna be silly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And it's part of what, like, because me and Ruby take these long drives between cons, and we just sit there. It's like, all right, so here's the world. They work here. They have these friends. This character is the marketable item. This character is gonna be, the shit character,
yeah,
and then we can make a game out of this, make a game out of that. Because
yeah.
we're driving
That
for like
that's the great thing.
5 hours at a time.
Yeah, that's the great thing I think about this project is that it's so scalable
Mm-hmm.
too. You can just do one issue. We're planning, I think, 4 issues
Yeah.
eventually, and then but that's just one little story. If it works out, we could do another four,
Yeah.
or
It can.
a couple more different stories, or we could do an ongoing series, or we could
Everything can be.
do games.
Yeah.
You can do, all kinds of stuff. It's really scalable.
Everything can be super. Yeah. There's all sorts of different genres and different things because the world is so. It's loosey. It's not so set in stone, in my opinion. It's kind of like loosey
Yeah,
goosey.
yeah, yeah. And that's kind of what I had like this establishing shot, and I was thinking like, what is this world going to be? And is it like, should I look up, pictures of Japan and draw Japan in the background, or like what, so I ended up doing like, let me do kind of a generic, city, like maybe like San Francisco or something, and then I'll have like Mount Fuji in the
Yeah.
background, like very obviously like Mount Fuji,
Yeah.
and then I'll have like a lot of flavor, especially in the map. You can see a lot of like, I pulled a lot of things from Dallas.
Oh, okay.
Like let me get some stuff from where I live and plug it into this.
Yeah.
Like I'll put a fountain from the fairgrounds, plug that in here, and I'll have
Okay.
like
Cool.
this. So there's like all these little Easter eggs hidden in it. That's like Dallas and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So just to kind of, it's almost like this kind of all the cities all at once kind of thing.
Put together. Yeah. It's a kind of an homage to the genre.
Yeah.
That's gonna be fun. Yeah. So we'll be working on that. The plan was to take it to Heroes. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens there.
We'll see how that goes.
Um,
Yeah, it's still on the fence, I guess.
because my whole strategy was to use the live event to get a lot of attention and things. Because seeing your art in person is different.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, especially your originals.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like when you scan it, I think the best that the work is when the page is done. When you scan it, it loses something.
There's something about
I'm
it.
not sure if it's like maybe like a texture thing,
I think so.
something. I'm not sure what it is, but
It's-
yeah, it definitely gets worse when you scan it.
I remember going to the MoMA and running into Starry Night for the first time in person, and I was like, "Oh, there's so much missing from the pictures. Like, there's a depth that
Sure.
is not
Yeah.
you just can't see."
Yeah.
And because the scans are too clean, like the paper is white, but the paper is not really kind of
Yeah.
white. Like the fibers and the layers
Yeah.
of whiteout on top of ink on top of whiteout, where you can see the little shadow of the bump.
Yeah, and even with a what's essentially a 2D image, a painting, there's a 3D element to it, and even when it's something as small as the thickness of ink,
Yeah,
there's a 3D element to it that you can't really account for in 2D.
yeah, that's for real. Which is why I thought Heroes was going to be a good place to go, because that's an audience that loves original art. Like that's their jam.
Yeah.
Because we always talk to kids because you gone to a couple of cons, but you had like mixed results on the attention. But I think you're going to shows that they're not looking for originals; they're looking for like their fan stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a really weird mix of shows, honestly. Like I used to do mostly anime shows back in the day, and I did some I had a couple years where I did Acon
Yeah,
here in Dallas a few when it was here in Dallas. But that was like back in 2007, 2008. And then more recently I started doing shows again, and I've really focused in on like indie shows, which are great.
that's your
You know,
audience. That's what they're looking for.
yeah, indie shows are they're way more fun. It's really relaxed compared to like, the bustle of a big
Yeah.
show. They're really relaxed, everybody wants to sit and chat, so they're really fun. So I've really focused in on kind of doing those, and I'm trying to add a new show every year. So I started with just doing one, put my toe back in. Then I did a couple. I do
Yeah.
one in Denver.
I
There's one in Austin that's really good.
for
So
you,
I kind
I would
of,
stick to these small shows and just keep working.
yeah,
Yeah, because that's
yeah,
key.
basically. Yeah, but yeah, I'd like to expand a bit. There's even some bigger indie shows that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not doing yet that I'd like to go to. And then, it's just a matter of, I've been actually trying to kind of go to shows and
Gotta,
just visit
yeah,
and
gotta
then
meet
try to
people.
talk to people there. I've done a couple here in Dallas actually, like some of the bigger ones, and I would go and talk to some of the people and,
That's cool.
are you doing well? Do you have a book? Like, is it selling? Stuff like that. And I kind of tried to pick cons that way.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, from now, when I look at it, I find like certain people and I see what they sell. So I look at people who sell like a lot of originals or a lot of like their own individual books or personal books, and then I see what shows they go to consistently. It's like, okay, you go back
Oh yeah.
because there's a
and
reason for it.
and there's a great network of people that'll, if you ask them, well, what
Mm-hmm.
shows do you make the most money at, they'll tell you
Yep.
this one and this one and this one.
Yeah, I remember talking
So
about. I remember a guy who's very print heavy, and I remember when I went to Heroes for the first time, I went with prints, and no one cared. And this other
yeah,
guy was like, "Yeah, don't go to that show, man. I don't do well there." I was like, "Well, yeah, you care a lot of prints." And at that show, once I bought originals, that's when people cared. I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it now.
yeah,
Everything has a
yeah,
different
exactly.
vibe."
Yeah. So I mean, that's something I have piles and piles of originals.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's the show for you. So
yeah,
let's wrap this up. Get into an hour. I'm gonna go over to the promo. So there's Kenneth, creator of Hearts Full of Sand, and you're on Patreon, Instagram, and Twitter.
yeah,
All the links are
yeah,
down below.
yeah. It's all just Kenneth J. Wagnon.
Okay.
Look that up on anything.
Can where can people like read your book now? Like I know you're putting out pages by pages,
You
right?
can. So the easiest way to do it is just go to the Patreon. I have a free link where you can download the PDFs and read the whole thing up to a few pages
Okay.
to current. So
Oh wow.
if you, yeah, you can read the whole thing, and eventually the whole thing will go up that way. So you can. That's the easiest way to read it. You can just download. I think there's like 3 PDFs now, and you can read through them
Okay,
that way.
cool.
And then if you support any amount to the Patreon, you get the most current page the same day that I finish it.
Okay.
So I scan it, tone it, edit it, save it, and then put it on Patreon.
Nice.
So you get everything up to the minute that I finish it, so you can follow along a little bit closely that way. But yeah, even if you don't want to do any support or anything, you can still just click on the free link. I think there's in the left side when you go to the main page on the Patreon, there's a little link that says catch up on
Okay.
Hearts Full of Sand.
Cool.
Click that and it'll take you right there.
Cool. So everybody go do that. Read, catch up on the Patreon, subscribe, follow him. So when the book comes out, you know where to get it. Or when Hit King
Yep.
comes out or King Hit comes out.
Yeah, King Hit. Yeah, we just started that one, which should be done in the next
Yeah.
couple months.
Yeah.
That should be ready to go, and we'll figure out how to release that and
Mhm.
where to put it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
We just named it like a week ago. So
yeah, yeah, exactly.
my
So
working title was
that's still
fight!
going, but
Exclamation point. Done.
yeah,
Cool.
that's right.
So cool. And let's go here. So bye everybody.
Bye.
Hit that